This is a Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and this week I'm joined by James and Mif as we cover the world record holding Treble champions of Scotland. But with further news emerging of Ange Postecoglou's imminent departure to Spurs, it looks like it'll be all changed once again as we prepare to defend the trophies next season and take another crack at the Champions League. Mif, Ange warned us a while back not to get too close to our heroes. Did you get too close?
Yes. Yes, I did. And now I am playing very much the role of an angry, rejected, spurned lover.
What's your general take at the moment before we get stuck into it?
I'm angry. Very angry.
Yeah, fuming?
Very angry. Fed a pack of absolute nonsense. Do we have the bleep machine?
Go for it.
I'm finding it very hard to be pragmatic. Very hard. So I think we should go to James.
Tell you, have you got a moment of the week that'll calm you down for a wee minute before we get back into it? You were there with the boys on Saturday.
Yeah, I was there with the boys, and to be fair, I'd probably already reconciled everything by then. Such had been the noise and such had been the rumour mill. But the moment of the week for me, a pretty personal one, was just being there. That was the wee one's first sort of cup final. So me and my two boys being there, Celtic lifting the trophy, was just a fantastic evening. And I know we all moaned like mad about the kick-off time, but that's me being to the is that my bleep? I said moaned like mad. I wasn't going to say anything else there. Moaned like mad about the kick-off time, but I've been to the St Johnstone game at 5 now, and the Cali game at 5. It creates a feisty atmosphere in the stadium. It gives obviously everybody a wee bit. I think the weather helped as well. There was a few, as may come through on the guys that watches on YouTube, the old Hooters a bit red thanks to the sun. But just being there when the boys lifted the trophy for a treble, but we've been so spoiled in recent years. But getting to do it with my two boys and maybe a wee bit selfish, which seems to be the theme of the week this week. I've gone for Celtic lifting the trophy when my boys been there.
And nothing, we'll go into it in detail here with Ange and everything that surrounds that, but nothing can take away from that kind of day, Mif. Whether it was yourself and the boys or everyone else that was in attendance, or folk watching at home, or folk watching around the world, it was a very special day. And
that is where the conflict comes. He has given us that day, and you will forever be grateful for that and for what he's done, for the way he's changed the club. But, dare I say, raise an old topic, I smell a rat.
Tell me this just quickly. Your lads are young, right? Just, young boys enjoying football, enjoying life. But how do they feel about something like Ange? Have you had a wee chat with them the day or anything?
They're not too happy, albeit that I was building them up from leaving and saying that it looks like he's got to go and things like that. The very unfortunate thing is both my boys are avid football strip collectors, as I was as a young boy, and the youngest, young Ginge, bounced down the stair last night with a Spurs strip on because he loves Harry Kane.
Jeez, he's
leaving. So unfortunately he spent the night sleeping in the shed. So it's
tough times for the lads. Wait till you tell them Santa's no real as well, Mif. It'll be all hell breaking loose. James, what about yourself?
Edit that out, Dave.
So this is an episode which, as I mentioned, should really all be about celebrating the success of the treble, but things change very quickly in football. And question to you, James, does the Ange news overshadow the achievements of the players this season?
I think the biggest disappointment for me last week was you're being lied to by Mif when he sat here and told us he was perfectly relaxed about it all, and if he goes, he goes, and all this absolute tripe, when we're getting the truth now.
Yeah,
is that right, Mif?
I know, I was trying to keep it in, lads, but to be perfectly frank with you, once the confirmation came, it's just brought a range of emotions in me, which hopefully I'll be able to articulate as we go on.
Yeah.
All three of us are on record last week. He'll stay.
Yeah.
3 answers.
So I mean, I kind of live in the future anyway, so I'm quite happy about it in terms
of the present. You live in the future.
I always look ahead, and you know what, you can see like the change, the excitement in the change. So Ange's gone, that's fine. What's coming up, that's where the real work happens now in terms of who is the next. There's a lot to be debated on that because there's conflicting reports about Rodgers. There's confliction in myself about Rodgers. Or do you gamble on a young up and coming? The Jesse Mars thing doesn't really excite me. He just seems a bit crackers.
Yeah, we'll get to him. He's on the agenda.
So, and the main thing is, it was a wonderful day. You were there with your two boys. The two of us were there with our dad. My dad was there to see his 8th treble, and that brings me to my moment of the week.
Go for it.
Which is original fan media from E-Tims. They've bookmarked a Rangers fan in 2015 saying, "We've got 7 trebles, you've got 3." And then they brought it back out last night and went, up you.
I think it was, we've got 7, you've got 3, we welcome the chase. and a shot, I don't know, however many, 8 years later.
I'll see you in 8 years.
That's well played.
We're good to go. Yeah, it's a good moment, I have to say. And there's some brilliant stuff. The video that Celtic released Sunday, which kind of showed you the footage of all 8 trebles interspersed with the captains of the time and the managers of the time, and footage of Jinky, and then blended into footage of Tom Rodgick's goal and stuff. It was a phenomenal piece of entertainment.
That was outstanding.
Yeah,
outstanding.
Really special. Okay, let's take a look at this week's agenda. As you'd expect, the big topic will be dominated by the news that Ange is out, but what do the lads here think about how he's gone about his exit, who now replaces him, and what will it mean for the future of some of the first team squad? Then it's time for the Mystery Celt, where as always I'll give some questionable clues to the panel as they try and name the former Celtic player. And then we'll close out the show, as always, with This Week in Celtic Media, where we once again dig out something that we think you'll enjoy from the world of Celtic Online. Okay, let's get started with all things Ange, but where to start, Mif? So, if reports are to be believed, he's now on the verge of signing a 2-year deal at Spurs with the possibility of a year's extension. Given that he was on a rolling 12-month contract with Celtic, it's unclear at this stage what kind of compensation we'll get here, but I think there's an article doing the rounds from the Telegraph which suggests 5 million, which is something. It's also unclear if he intends to take any of the backroom staff with him, but John Kennedy's name has also been doing the rounds. So, James, to get right into it, do you have any issues with the way Ange has gone about his business, or is this just football?
This is just football, but I do have issues with how he personally has gone about his business. He's spun his load of fanny the whole last week and before. I've no issue with him leaving, and I think if I was his agent and I wasn't a Celtic fan, I'd be advising him the same, because you can say, like, stay for 1 more year, make your name in Europe, you'll be getting even better offers and blah blah blah, but draw a group of death, get hit with injuries, end up with 0 points, you're not getting that offer again. So it is the right time for him taking Celtic out of the equation. So I've got no issue with him leaving. He's not a Celtic fan, and you're only kidding yourselves on if you think he's come in and went, oh, that's me, Celtic forever kind of thing. He's a professional football manager and he's making a professional football decision, so no issues with that. But don't come out then last week and tell us all you're focusing on is the Scottish Cup final and various wee lines here and there. I get the kind of quoting Tommy Burns kind of stuff. That was a wee bit kind of in poor taste when you're off to these kind of things. He could have handled it a wee bit better, so maybe he'll learn from that.
We'll get to just shortly, but I dug out some of the quotes of the time, and not from that long ago, not from season 1, from this season, February and back in November. They don't make for good reading now, Mif, I have to say, with it, with all we know now in the hindsight. Quick question for you: if all the talks with Spurs break down tonight, with Ange and Daniel Levy, would you take them back?
It would be a long road back. I suppose in the spirit of forgiveness. If I was looking to take Rodgers back, I would need to think Ange, but things are just a bit raw. So many of the points that James made, I would echo. I think that to say the things that he said and then be away within 6 months.
Yeah, February. There are quotes from February.
February, sorry. Is fairly startling, and it tells you, everybody thinks their club's special. There's many achievements in Celtic's history to suggest that we are special, certainly domestically and for a time in Europe. But in reality, like James mentioned, you're not really special. You're a stepping stone. You're just another club that you can earn a decent amount of money off because you've got a big fan base. But the difference is, Ange told us we were special. He did. He told us we were special and then bolted at the first chance. So that's the bit that kind of sticks in my craw. Amazing what he's done for the club. An amazing record domestically. Absolutely outstanding. Probably similar to Rodgers in terms of his European record. Questionable, but the performances definitely in the Champions League. Performances much better.
And it was building. It was improving.
So much has been left undone by this. But as I say, an outstanding performance from him when he was here. Amazing what he did for the club compared to, how he's left it, compared to what it was like when he walked in the door. But the manner in which he's left, I'm just not happy with it at all. And it, for some of the stuff that he said and the way that he's kind of engineered it, nah, it just doesn't sit right with me, and won't for some considerable time. It may soften over time, but how I'm feeling right now is I think we've been absolutely mugged off. We've been kippered.
And I think the way you currently feel about Brendan Rodgers, and we'll get to him as well, shows that time is a healer, because there was one point you'd barely mention his name.
True, but this has made me quite hard-hearted in the sense that, right, well, if that's the way it's going to be and we're going to make a business decision, Rodgers is the best business decision. I won't be happy about it. Mm-hmm. I'll still go because Celtic's my team, but I'll go, and I will probably care a wee bit less in the initial period, just because I'll have became a bit. Pre-season will pass, and I'll be excited for the start of the season. We'll hopefully have made some signings. That in itself will excite you. Whoever the manager is will be the manager. But certainly, I just feel a wee bit burnt with the whole thing.
The conflict that I can hear in you, Mif, and I think it's the case for a lot of us, is that, well, Ange as well as Brendan, Paddy talks about Brendan Rodgers. He's got really mixed feelings because ultimately he hated the way he left, but he had some brilliant times under him. It gave him some of his best memories. He said, some of those Hammerns or Rangers and different things. Paddy said it was potentially the best time in his Celtic supporting life. And we've all had an amazing couple of years under Ange. It's Saturday been one of the best. And now we're in this conflict where that's all changed. And you can just see why people are feeling spurned by it, James.
Yeah, I suppose part of it is that Ange went deeper than just the football. There was real cohesion at the club. Everyone was facing the same direction, probably for the first time in my life, following Celtic. So it's, if you look a bit deeper, it's all of those things you've got to fix. We can talk however we want about Rodgers, but you can't deny there's going to be a conflict in the building with at least one, if not two people in Peter and Mark Lowell. So that's a conflict we didn't have, a month ago. That's going to be there. These things can be resolved. Like you say, it's a business decision. This aged like warm milk on the post-match show last night. I'm going, absolutely not, never Brendan Rodgers. And then I'm like, well, it's continuity candidate stuff, and it puts you right back on track.
Better the devil,
I would prefer it not to be Rodgers, but I've kind of almost made my peace with the fact it would be a very typical Celtic move to do it.
The one that kind of sharpened my focus was Davy Moyes. No harm at Davy Moyes, but that's not for me at all.
And just to catch this just now, we'll get into a wee bit of the speculation about who it might be and who it won't. The suggestion just now, we're recording here on Monday evening, the suggestion just in the last few minutes is that Rodgers has ruled himself out. There's something come through. Not confirmed, but the suggestion is that it's not the right timing for him just now. The story is that he's going to take some time out of football and then revisit it. So it does make a lot of sense, and I can't believe all three of us. There's so many folk that I'm amazed by that I've seen online, guys that I know pretty well, saying they'd fully welcome Brendan Rodgers back, and they were fully against it in 2019. So it's amazing how these things do come full circle. But in terms of Ange, we know, or we certainly knew, that he's got this ruthless streak in him. We've seen it in the way that he's dealt with some of the players, the way he's dealt with some of the press as well. So maybe this shouldn't be as much of a surprise as it has become. But you'll have seen some of the chat online, people calling him a rat and all that kind of stuff.
I never realised how fat he was some days.
There's people starting to question his overall look, which is something. Where do you stand on it,
Miff? I think it's been a bit sly. I do. That bit you mentioned there, James, about the professional football manager, absolutely, that isn't lost on me. The reality is, I don't think any manager who works in Scotland will ever get offered a job as big, and when I say big, I mean with everything it entails, as a Spurs job, managing what should be every year a top six side based on the resources they've got. I think that's a very big carrot for MD that was, desperate to work in Europe, then got their sort of entry level in Celtic, the SPL, achieved domestic dominance, Champions League qualification, which you can argue is probably as much as you can achieve. Yes, there's the desire to do better in Europe, but that's your absolute fundamentals that you need to achieve, and he's done that. So you can be absolutely clinical and look at it that way and say he's achieved everything he can achieve here, and his stock's at its highest. We were chatting about that earlier, and he has to go for it. If James was his agent, he'd be advising the same, all that type of thing. But to have played on so many different elements of the way we are as a fan base, mixture of him himself being an immigrant and all those different times, different things, saying not too long ago we'd be surprised about how long he'd be here. Well, he was right about that. I'll give him that. So they're the bits that don't sit right with me. And listen, it's all after timing, isn't it? You know, you're looking back and you're saying, oh, well, with the benefit of hindsight, we can all turn around and call him a rat. But, you know, when you look at how Rodgers acted, he bolted when there was still work to be done in the season. Ange has seen it to a lot closer to the season, but ultimately his head's been out the building before the end of the season as well. It's just that the news has been held back for longer. So I'm you know, for me, it's just really poor. And whilst I don't think I wish him any ill. Maybe I'll become more bitter over the next few days, but I don't think I wish him any ill. I'm just bitterly disappointed with the way this has played out.
Yeah, there's a suggestion that, so his agent's a guy called Frank Trimbley. You might have seen him on the park, you know, with Ange at different celebrations, and he's believed to have been pushing really hard for the move, allegedly over the last couple of months. So Spurs are, I think, 70 days without a manager. So we don't know how long Ange has been in contact. They've obviously been knocked back by a couple of different managers, but again, this is where I just fall on the fact that this is just football. That's his job. His job is to get his client the best possible deal. And at some point, apparently he's close to Levy as well, and he's based in London. And at some point, he's obviously turned around to Ange and said, this is a goer. There's something to this. James, do we just need to now accept Celtic's place in the pecking order when it comes to not just players, but managers? This is just football. They come and go. Ange, I think he got it right when he said, listen, don't get too close, because that's what happens. We've seen it with Juranovic, we've seen it with Giakoumakis. Do we just need to accept at Celtic that if a guy comes as manager and is successful for 2, maybe 3 years at a push, then he naturally gets the move on?
Yeah, just for a moment, if you keep to the professional angle of it, if Trimbley doesn't convince Ange to take this move, right, he stays for a year and, like I was saying earlier on, doesn't work out in Europe and his stock falls and he doesn't then get a move next year, the agent isn't getting paid, and then Trimbley's job will be under pressure and all that stuff. So he is motivated to keep his job and make these moves. It's an unfortunate, fairly grubby part of the game, but it is what it is. There's a real positive in here in that, you know, Rodgers and Postecoglou, not Ange, Postecoglou.
Oh, you're going full surname.
Ange's got in.
Like it.
Postecoglou.
Like it. I can get on board with that.
Aye. They've both been recognised for their talent by EPL teams. So there's a positive in there that, you know, we can sell that to managers, but also, you know, the football we are playing and the way we play football and the results we get, the achievements we make, they're being recognised. So you can see that. And then as part of that, absolutely, you know, we don't expect to keep the players for, you know, 5 years, 7 years, Larson style. We've been saying it all the way through, Ange. It's 2 to 3 years you would expect these players to stay, and they'll go on within that, and they should be going within that. So I think we just need to apply that logic then to the management. Yeah.
Well, I remember we were chatting off air not long ago. Tell us about the butterfly effect and how it's come into play here.
The butterfly effect. So Juve get caught up in their latest, you know, cheating at football scandal, and the director of football at the time was then director of football at Spurs by that time, and he obviously had to be fired because he was getting banned for 3 years or something like that. So he's out for Spurs. Scotty Munn's in.
Scotty Munn, the Australian
who goes, I know a guy, and Ange is now Spurs manager.
So the butterfly effect in general is that if a butterfly flaps its wings somewhere, there's this knock-on effect and ramifications across the globe. And so Juventus cheat and Ange ends up at Spurs.
Because Juventus cheated, we've lost our manager.
Yeah, that doesn't sit well at all. Let's get into some of the quotes, Mif. You've mentioned a couple in passing. As I said, you know, just in part of prep for today's episode, there's quite a lot of quotes I've looked at and they do not sit well at all now. I probably loved them at the time. I'm quite sure I did. And now I'm just thinking, oh, that doesn't read well for Ange at all. Sorry, Postecoglou. Mif, the one that I quoted at the top of the shop was, don't get too attached to your heroes. So that was in November 22 when talking about Giakoumakis and Juranovic leaving. And with the benefit of hindsight, he was possibly also including himself somewhere within that quote. As much as I don't believe he knew back at that point what was going to transpire.
You flagged that as a concern at the time. You did on the show. You went, maybe that applies to him as well.
Did I? So wise, Mif.
Sounds like something you would say, Tino.
It does, fair enough. I'll take it. I'm going to read out, though, a slightly longer quote from Ange. So this was just over a few months ago. It was the end of February, so 3 and a bit months ago. Not long in life's bigger picture. I'm still here, even though people have been getting me out the door. I'm hoping that over the course of time, as long as I'm here, and I think you'll be surprised how long I'm here, I'm just consumed by what I do, which is to try and make this football club the best it can be and to enjoy every minute of it. Mate, the world of management, I'm too old to be carried on by anybody. Things change very quickly. How many managers last 3 years in their roles these days? You've either got to have extraordinary success or in rare circumstances a club sticks by you. Apart from that, everyone doesn't last that long. I'm going into my 3rd year next year and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and not really worry about what other people see, because I'll tell you what, the first thing people will say is I'm not ambitious enough because I'm not moving on. Mif, what do you make of those comments now based on everything we know?
Well, I think he's actually kind of covering all bases there with what he's saying, because what he's saying is, you know, nothing would surprise me type thing. Things change quickly, all that, and it really does cover him. Whilst he's saying on the one hand that he's committed, he's also saying, well, but that could change, you know. So all bases are covered. And again, with hindsight, you're looking in and picking out bits of the quote that suit your argument in many ways. But the context to all this is the fact that he made us feel secured by what he said, and therefore last week when the sort of rumours first started swirling, we did feel relatively comfortable about it. Ultimately, the game of football creates these situations. We support a club. We support our club. That's what it is to us. It's emotional to us. It's an emotional investment. But to others who come and go, the kind of players and the managers who pass in and pass out, really gone are the days where it means a lot to them, unless they're an academy graduate or somebody that supported the club when they were younger. Everybody else that comes in, you know, doesn't love the club, but may grow to love it when they come in. Somebody like Emilio Azagiri would be the obvious, scenario. Well, Strachan, of course. But I think just the rhetoric that Ange used in his whole time here did make it feel different. It did feel to me like it was different. Which means that the fact that he's left so quickly, when I feel there's still work undone, has came as a bit of a surprise and a shock. Hence why I'm not too happy. And I don't think many Celtic fans will be happy. I do take James's point though. One wee glimmer in this is the excitement of what's to come, because we are in an excellent position financially as a club. We've qualified for the Champions League. You know, we've got the full summer ahead. What I will concede in all of this is that if it was going to get done, it had to get done quickly. It had to be done as quickly as possible after the end of the season. So for that is a good thing. That is a good thing.
Not dragging on.
Not dragging on, and us being in the middle of June, towards the end of June, and we're still wondering if he's going to go. Then he goes, and then it's the same situation we were in when he first arrived. If you can get somebody in the door within the next, say, 10 days,
has to be,
then, you know, great, because the targets are already identified. Mm-hmm. The talks have already been held.
In place.
The players that are being sold are being sold. The good thing is, if you bring in somebody, they can either kibosh somebody being sold if they want to keep them. Might not suit the player, but you take my point. You know, ratify the signings that are being made, and then, because I imagine that'll be part of the discussions initially, to say, look, here's who we've got our eye on, you know, blah blah blah, and then gives them time to get to work. I'm not sure what route the club will go down. You know, Rodgers is an obvious one, just for obvious reasons. The Maresca Citigroup link is one that's, you know, I know you were a big Enzo Maresca fan the first time, Tino. Somebody like Potter, I don't think Potter would come to Scotland. I can't see him coming up here. I think the job is one he would maybe like, but I just can't see him so soon after Chelsea. I can't see him coming up.
We'll get to those guys shortly, but I think I'd like to hope that Ange will have, this news will have been kept within a fairly closed off circle. I'd like to think Ange would have given Michael Nicholson his place, you know, given that on paper it looks like they've got a great relationship. And I'd like to think, you know, between Michael Nicholson, the Citigroup contacts, Mark Law and others, they have a plan in place. It looks like Ange will be confirmed certainly within the next 24 hours, possibly less, possibly by the time we stop recording here.
I thought it was done just there.
If timelines are to be believed, he was granted permission at 1 o'clock and agreed terms at 4.
Aye,
yeah, that's pretty rapid. Aye,
yeah. Well, I'll get to that in a wee minute.
He was fully focused last week on the
they grey trousers have hardly touched the seat in the plane.
Yeah, James, just going back to that quote before we kind of move on from that piece. So various pieces within it. You know, you'll be surprised at how long I'm here. That's gone to beat me out, Dave. The other thing about these things happen very quickly, and I suppose that's a valid point. You know, things do change very quickly in football. It's just the way of the world, you know, and that's life. But do you think he's been genuine throughout, you know, with these various things? Is that what he truly believed at the time, or do you think he's always known that he's going to jump ship? I think he's potentially had offers, by the way. There was chat that he was sounded out about Leeds earlier in the season, not interested. I don't think it's quite the first time someone's come calling he's jumped. I think there's people been interested in Ange before now, but he's moved on now and it doesn't sit well at the moment. But where are you at? Do you think he's been genuine?
You need to put a blanket over Mif's head, if I'm going to be honest here. I think he has been genuine, and it's a positive outlook to take on him. I think he has been genuine. I think he's been caught by surprise by the calibre of the offer put in front of him. I don't think he expected to get that level at this stage. I thought in his own mind he might need a bit of positive exposure in Europe that would bring, you know, offers maybe not even as high as Spurs, around about Spurs kind of thing, but not Leeds where you're going, that's a basket case, they could go down, and they did. So he was right, and he'll have been advised right to not take that for whatever money. So then the Spurs offer comes along and he goes, I've said a lot of things that go completely against that, but I've got new information in front of me and I'm going to take the move. The
circumstances have changed. I think you're right. I think if Leeds come in, Southampton come in, even Everton, not big enough, not enough to turn his head. And I know Spurs are a riot at this moment in time, but they're a big club. Mif, you're right, they're a top 6 club, you know, more often than not. They've got the infrastructure there. If Daniel Levy can rein it in a wee bit, they've got huge potential, and that's what Ange loves. You can see why he's been drawn to it.
What a couple of thoroughly nice gentlemen you are. Just lovely, you know, sunny side up, positivity, glass half full, you know, help my old grannies across the road. Just the best guys. Really are.
I would do the same for you.
Oh, no, you would.
Tell you what, Mif, I'll ask you something else which will get you angry. What about how he approached Cup final week, right? He shut down all the external noise, asked for full focus from the players, the fans, almost asked the media to give him a bit of respite on that. But I think he was right to do so, because what alternative, Mif? Listen, big game on Saturday, guys. I'm speaking to Spurs, by the way, but big game on Saturday. He can't come out with that. And I think he's got to pause on that, what are you saying?
Don't speak to Spurs then. Do your job.
That's not how football works, though, is it?
Well, don't do both. Don't pretend it's not happening when it's happening.
But it happens all the time, right? Managers and players
I know it happens all the time,
up.
but don't straight up lie to us that you're fully focused on something when you're not.
So this is what I think. I think he was 91.5% focused, Mif. But I said to James last night, I think he's had a couple of Zoom calls with Daniel Levy and others. He can't not have spoken. The pace has gone at over the last 24 hours or so. He can't not have had conversations, or at least his agent can't not have been speaking to Spurs.
The particular rat that I smell is that I believe this was done before the season ticket deadline. That's what I believe.
I don't think there's any tie-in with that.
Listen, he's got it on authority.
As a
podcaster ITK.
Podcaster ITK. Sign up to my newsletter. I've not got one, by the way. Too many red. Aye, rat, I'll go with that. Too many red flags for me. Not having it. Disingenuous. Nonsense. We've been fed an absolute load of nonsense. We've been kippered. We've been done. And do you know what? So be it. We need to move on. We need to get a new manager. But it will affect how I look at him. The lead up to that and how this has been done will affect how I look at him. It'll probably pass with time. Like you say, some of the days he's given us have been phenomenal. But how it feels now is it just feels really quite disingenuous.
Just to Tino's specific point about last week where he's saying he's full focus, do you have an issue with that in particular?
What else could he say?
He could not do it. It's not what he said, it's what he did.
I feel there's been a lot of cloak and dagger stuff going on. As I say, disingenuous, telling you one thing, meaning another. Yeah. You know, his trousers look stupid, his jacket looks stupid, his hair looks stupid, his beard looks stupid.
I never liked that jumper in the first place.
My
jumpers are getting big.
Jumpers. That's how you're
going to see the charity shops full of grey jumpers for guys like Mif. I mean, Mif's theory and stuff that he's heard is that it's been known in the building at least for a couple of weeks. And I suppose that's where it doesn't sit well, because as a fan, you're all in on lifting the trophy last Saturday. You're all in on going to Hampden to break a world record, on Saturday past there. But it seems that everything's been taken care of in the background, and that's what doesn't sit well.
I think the team played like they knew he was away as well.
real plaudits to the players for getting through that, because whether they knew it, I don't think they knew it, but they knew something was going on, and like us, it was becoming more and more likely as the week went on, and they've kept their task and get the job done.
Yeah. Tell you, we'll move on from all the Ange bashing. Maybe very justified, don't get me wrong, but we'll move on to something, a bit more enjoyable, I suppose. And as you say, James, there's a lot of excitement here, because out with the old, in with the new. The prospect of who could be the next guy is always pretty exciting. And as you touched on, Mif, the role has never been so attractive. So, you've got a first team squad full of really talented players, some guys at the peak of their powers, some guys yet to move into their peak years. You'll have a sizable transfer budget, potentially the biggest in our history, given the way the club's been running in the last couple of years. Guaranteed Champions League group stage football. I don't think that's ever been on offer to a new manager. You've had qualifiers and the potential of. This is guaranteed. And just a general point about the fans and the club in general being on a massive high, having lifted another treble. So, James, lots of names doing the rounds already, which is no surprise, but we should be able to attract a really high calibre of manager this time around, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. And, if the immediate rumours about Rodgers are true in terms of he's ruling himself out, then we've got to start, really moving at pace on these, because as you're touching on there, the player profile that we've got, there's going to be changes within there. And, up until a couple of weeks ago, we were thinking about coming in here after the season's over and doing a bit of a kind of transfer show and stuff like that, and work out who's moving. And there's a lot of moving parts to be moved around. That totally changes depending on the manager that comes in. And the manager has got to be continuity in terms of style of football. You can't bring Moyes in because he want different players, inverted fullbacks, that's gone. He won't be playing flowing football. So you've got to be thinking along the lines of Knutson and managers like that. So, there's a 15-20 man list there, and it will go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Keeping in mind that on that list you've got the likes of Roy Keane and Lenny and Bruni and Steven Gerrard, all the stupid stuff you see. Yeah. So you can rule them out. But I tell you, we'll take a short look at a few of the bookies' favourites. So I've listed just 4 now, and I know there's more. We'll start with Brendan Rodgers and just we'll look at a couple of pros and cons of each. Pros, Mif, he knows the city. Proven winner, talented coach, seriously raised standards on his arrival at Celtic. I coined the phrase earlier on, better the devil you know. There's some cons. Maybe he is the con, but
man, yes, he is.
The Danny McGrain stuff, playing his son in a friendly, wow, what a move that was, if you remember that.
I've seen Celtic first posting that.
Listen, as I say, I don't think it'll happen. The news seems to be doing the rounds that it's not happening, but just short, Mif, where would you be if you were the man?
As I said, it's a business decision if they brought him in. I'd accept there's nothing you can do about it, but I'd prefer other options. But I would understand if the club appointed them, because whilst we are in a good position, we're only in a good position if the person coming in has the calibre to handle the position that we're in, and there are very few managers with the experience that Rodgers has. Also, what you would know for the start is that he is an absolute rat and would jump at the first offer that you got. So you would already be making a plan for that anyway. But you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the better the devil. You know that if a decent offer comes for England, Leeds job, he would have took the Leeds job. He wouldn't have waited. He would have took that. So, you know what you're getting. If you appoint that, then he'll mange you, because he will just bolt as soon as he gets another offer.
James, your short reply on Rodgers?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, why did the scorpion kill the frog? Because it's a scorpion. That's what scorpions do. You're pre-warned with that. I think if you structure things right.
Why did the scorpion kill the frog? That's a new one.
That's an old classic.
No, I've not heard that one. Same as I've never heard them delving in the future. I didn't know with George Jetson on the podcast.
We haven't got time for the full. I'll give you that after the show.
Right, okay.
I'll link to the metaphor in this show notes.
It's great. But if you move towards a director of football structure, then you can, very much inverted commas, trust Rodgers to come in. If you let Rodgers come in and say, I'm doing this and that, the next thing, absolutely not. You've got to give him a really limited scope and a good relationship with his scouting team.
See, just on that. So Rodgers did very well initially when he went to Leicester.
Mm-hmm.
But both at Celtic and at Leicester, he's subsequently not been backed.
Yeah.
And Liverpool.
And why do you think the board are seeing something in his management style that says there's a definitely a time limit on how effective he can be?
It's the ego, and that ego can take you to success, but it can also really, poison your circle. And I think folk just go, maybe not,
I think what we now need to move towards as a club, and it apparently was going to be the case when Dom Mackay swept into power a couple of years ago.
Is Dom coming back?
Dom Izovsky, but
He's won the war.
in terms of the longer term future, I can now see why it makes sense to have this director of football role, whoever that may be. You know, people are suggesting Martin O'Neill's and different things, but whoever that may be, which allows for a head coach to just come and go, and it just allows that continuity, because the alternative is, so Ange came in and clearly had full control of the football department, Brendan Rodgers the same, and when they go, it just leaves you in pieces. You want to maybe move towards a system where it's just a head coach that just slots in like another piece of the puzzle, and if you get a talented head coach, they can come and go every 2 years if they want, because we'll just bring in the next one.
I think, to be fair to particularly Michael Nicholson, they've been making those moves. There's been a lot of quiet, high calibre appointments being posted in the background at Celtic, under Mark Lawwell's team, and they're, touch wood, they're staying in place. So that this structure is being built, and you've got, a strongly improved fitness management, talent acquisition, all that kind of stuff. So as long as that keeps going and they flesh it out to a full structure, then it should be much simpler. I don't think we're in a perilous position in that regard.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Next on the list, so big favourite of mine, Mif. I've spoke about him a lot, and I spoke about him before we got Ange. John Kennedy. I'm a really big fan of John Kennedy. Talented, experienced, well-rated coach. He's learned from a number of high calibre managers, least of all Ange himself, Rodgers,
Neil Lennon,
maybe Lenny, Ronnie. He's picked up stuff off all of them. He's a smart guy. He speaks brilliantly. I really like John Kennedy. Knows obviously all about Celtic and what's required. That's never in question. The big con, of course, for John would be that he's never been a manager in his own right. And the other suggestion is that he may well go on to join Ange at Spurs, which is interesting in itself. But what's your take on John Kennedy, James?
I think he learned under Rodgers how to leave Celtic in the lurch, aye?
Who?
Yeah, Kennedy.
Oh, he?
Look at he's probably going to go. I know.
This is Mikey Johnson territory here, man. Woo! Did you see that face? Oh.
I'm telling Mum.
For those listening on Spotify or iTunes, Tino just made a disgusted face.
No, I'm a huge Kennedy fan, and I think there is a time when he will be Celtic manager, but he's got to go out and cut his teeth elsewhere. I think it's a really good move for him to go with Ange and learn how it is to be in that type of environment with that calibre of player and the type of football and training facilities they'll have, all that stuff, and then see where he goes on his own, and then maybe there's a place at Celtic. I don't think it's now. It might have been this time next year, but that'll be changed now.
Okay.
If Ange is to be believed, which is obviously questionable, he doesn't often take staff with him.
Aye.
So very interesting that of all the places he's been and the staff that he could have taken with him, Kennedy is the one that he chooses to take. So it's always been bandied around Celtic for a number of years how highly rated Kennedy is and has been by everyone that's worked with him. Really unfortunate circumstances. I remember me and Tino clutching at straws, hoping that in those last few games in the COVID season he would be able to do something, but the squad that he had at his disposal were just so disengaged by that time. John Joe Kenny getting away corners for inside his own half.
Was it easier inside your own half?
It was at the halfway line.
Oh, sorry. inside the opposition half. That's what I meant. My head scrambled, lads. So I find that almost like a proof of all that that's been spoken about in the past around how highly rated he is. That somebody with Postecoglou's experience has come in and decided that he'd want to take him with him. So listen, that in itself would be another blow, because when you're going about continuity, there's no more bigger symbol of continuity at Celtic than John Kennedy.
Yeah.
I think he's been coached now for 10 years, give or take. I think he was first team coach along with John Collins under Ronnie Dyler. When was that? 2014?
There's who I'd have JC
very
set
good.
up competitions in the dressing room. There you go, wee man.
There's your abs.
Oh, there's your abs.
We'll move on for that. The other one, you mentioned him, James, Jesse Marsh. So 49 years of age, Jesse Marsh, pros, very experienced manager, spent time at the Red Bull club, Salzburg initially, good success there. Leipzig, not so much success, and Leeds, less so. Don't know if it's a pro or not, if he speaks fluent German, which, I don't know, might be handy.
Bring back Marvin Comper.
Yeah.
Cons definitely is that he's not got a lot of success to speak of on his CV. He won a League and Cup double with Salzburg twice, but that's about it. And he's quite charismatic. I quite enjoyed watching and listening to him when he was at Leeds, but ultimately failed. He managed to save them from relegation first time around, but ultimately it didn't work out beyond that. So how would you feel about that kind of appointment?
I've heard a couple of pre-match interviews with him and stuff like that. It gives me Jake Humphries vibes.
That is exactly what I was going to say, mate.
Really?
I swear that's exactly what I was going to say.
And
I'm into
Are they good vibes?
I'm into positive thought and all that stuff. I'm
looking at the future,
but I live in the future. But
why are you sitting in the comfy chair?
That's exactly. But then, just some of it feels a bit bullshitty. Do you know what I mean? So there you go.
We should be used to that by now, lads.
Yeah. What do you feel about Jesse Marsh from what you know of him?
Issues with somebody called Jesse being the Celtic manager, if I'm being honest.
Can't say that in 2023.
Modernise, Mif. Modernise.
No, I don't. No, I'll be up there. I think he would be a reasonable fit. I think he would be a reasonable fit around, you mentioned continuity and style of play. I think he would play a broadly similar way. I think he would, having success at Salzburg would suggest that big fish, small pond expectation is something he'd be used to, rather than, Leipzig, you're maybe had heavy investment, but expected to go toe to toe with bigger guns that are there. And then at Leeds, anybody following Bielsa, the team were on a downward trajectory by the time he got there. Did well to keep them up, but I don't think the investment's been great in the summer, of which he would have been part of. So, there's wee bits that would be good, but I think there's more of it that would be bad. I just don't think he's quite had that. Although I think he had a reasonable run in the Champions League with Salzburg. Did they not give Liverpool a fright over a couple of games, if memory serves me correct? So I don't know. There's positives and negatives with Marsh.
This is where it's going to be interesting if we appoint a coach or a manager here. And I think he's a coach, in its true sense, and maybe he struggled with the weight of expectation of doing all things at Leeds. If all he had to do was come in, I'm saying all he had to do, it's obviously a huge job, but if all you need to do is come in and deal with the playing side of things and make sure the training's spot on and your system and your approach and your tactics and all that, then I think you're looking for a very different type of profile. Ange Postecoglou is a manager in every sense. Guys like Jesse Marsh and others that might be, throw their hat in the ring, you might get away with it, if that's the right term, of just appointing a really decent coach.
Yes, and again, it feeds back into the structure being right behind the scenes. You can take confidence in that if the structure's already there. But I don't know. I think it's maybe going to need a different type of character than Jesse Marsh to navigate through this. Like you say, I think there's an element of, he's a bit of a LinkedIn manager, Jesse Marsh, rather than somebody that's maybe going to need to come in and, come in with a clear vision, yes, but also have the strength of personality. One thing about Ange Postecoglou is really strong character, and the power of his personality obviously meant a lot within the squad of players and the way that he went about things. So that change is going to come for the playing squad. I think it's really important we get a balance that works for the squad as well. And I'm just not quite sure Jesse Marsh would be too, I don't know, as I say, almost a bit too corporate.
I think it's really important to distinguish between a coach and a coach. There's coaches who are BBC guys out on the playing field laying stuff out.
Balls, bibs and cones, Mif.
and there's coaches. I think Ange would have fitted a director of football structure with his coaching style because he's a leader. So it's got to be a coach with gravitas and presence. It can't just be somebody that's there to do drills.
Yeah, I think in the nicest way, I don't think Gavin Strachan has the personality to go and take something like that on, albeit he's a good coach. But I think there are coaches who do have the gravitas and the status to potentially step in. Whoever's appointed, you need to be strong in so many ways in terms of your media management, how you address the fans and all that. And as I say, it falls cheaply now, but Ange had that in spades at the time. Martin O'Neill had it in spades. Brendan Rodgers had it in spades. Even Lenny at times. Successful Celtic managers can handle all of that side of the game, and there's more to it as a Celtic manager than just knowing football. There's a whole other side. Yep. The last one I want to touch on is Graham Potter. So obviously he's very highly rated down south, so much so that Chelsea decided to give him a 5-year deal, which looks foolish now given they've chopped him pretty sharp. But he worked wonders at Brighton. Clearly got something about him. The con, of course, is that he'll have been on an absolute fortune. He'll be on some sort of gardening leave just now, and I think as soon as he picks up another job, that'll affect what's still getting paid out. So that might be dead in the water before it even starts. But he's in the running. He's somewhere certainly within the the bookies list at the moment. Any thoughts on that, James, on what he might do?
So I wouldn't have been looking at it closely enough in terms of when he was at Brighton. Obviously the Chelsea thing was over before it started, really. But I mean, do you see him as an Eddie Howe type, an intelligent coach, manager? I don't know enough about him.
I think some coaches and managers just suit certain clubs. And what he done is he went into a club at Brighton with, I don't want to say low expectations, because they're an ambitious club, and like Brentford, they've moved to a type of Moneyball system.
Guy, Tony, what's his name?
Tony Bloom.
Aye.
Yep.
So that's the kind of we should get Tony Bloom to pick a manager, basically, because he's the one that's bringing these structures in and doing it in budget as well.
That's what I was going to say. Brentford and Brighton would be great examples of that, where I think Brentford had Dean Smith leave, Thomas Frank come in, who was an assistant, have kept the same philosophy around the club, got promoted off the back of it. Then you've got Brighton with De Zerbi coming in. They've actually went and kicked on again. Recruitment's been excellent. I think Ange actually referenced the recruitment.
Is it Matoma?
Matoma,
aye.
Because he
tried to get him.
He was somebody wanted to bring in initially. So I think potentially for Potter, taking away the financial aspect of it because of the Chelsea situation, I think Potter's philosophy and Celtic, the way that they're hoping to be structured, would be a good fit. But having managed Brighton and then Chelsea, I would think that he would fit in the same category as Ange, that he would probably get a top half job in England the next time it come up.
Where it could be interesting for somebody like Potter. So Potter is now in this reputation building stage again, like at Olympia. He's failed at Chelsea, dress it up how you want. And at the moment, if he doesn't take a job like Celtic, what does he get next? He gets bottom half of the table probably, and that's where he's at. Yeah. What you can see now, taking the positives from it here, but what you can see from Ange is that if you're highly successful at Celtic, there is a route to top six. Ange will be the first guy to blaze that trail, but that could be the move for Potter to say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 years, I'm going to sweep the boards, I'm going to restore your credibility in Europe, and hopefully I'll then get the call that Ange got.
And that's it. There's a sizable budget at Celtic this summer, and you're going to be getting great exposure every 2 weeks all throughout the UK Champions League football. So better to catch exposure of that type if you're confident in your own abilities than a club, like you say, bottom half of the Premiership that's going to get doings most of the time, and just bump about kind of thing, and maybe push for Europe, but also maybe be in a relegation zone. So dangerous.
Yeah, you could see why it would be attractive to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's important here is that we bring someone in quickly so that there isn't almost like a hangover from Ange leaving.
That's my main reason for falling into Brendan Rodgers' trap that he set me. is that the pace is most important to me here. Obviously, not making a mistake is prime. Yeah, but pace very close beside it.
We can't leave it too long and then get involved in a saga, much like Tottenham have done themselves. We need something decisive, something quick. But I do also think we need someone with experience. So, like Maresca being the one that I don't think would be a good route to go down, but he's a name that seems to continually popping back up.
So Maresca will definitely be considered as part, because he's part of the City group. So he's currently Pep's number 2. But a couple of years ago we were potentially in for him, and he went to Parma and failed. On his own. He's now come back and restored some credibility. So who knows if someone like that might be in the mix. We don't have time to cover the various others just now, but names, some you've mentioned, some you've not. Davy Moyes, no thanks. Lenny, that's done. Bruni, maybe in the future, not now. Steve Clark. The bookies are guessing as much as anybody else, aren't they? And there's so many names that don't inspire.
Kevin Muscat. I don't have a problem with the Rangers side thing of it. You can't stand Rangers. You got to know the dark side of it all and just went, nah, that's not my kind of thing,
So he's basically followed in Ange's footsteps. Ange left Melbourne, places, Muscat stepped in and followed the success, and he's
Angela told Celtic about him.
Yeah, he's currently manager at Yokohama, and he's won the league there as well. So there's a lot of other names in the hat, but you might also find the eventual appointment of someone that we've just not mentioned. There's obviously a huge market. As I said at the top there, it's the position we're in, it's so attractive right now, and all of a sudden you were maybe potentially a couple of years ago speaking to a pretty small pool when Eddie Howe and whatever fell through. Now that's expanded dramatically, and you maybe get to sit in front of guys that you wouldn't otherwise see.
I think it'll still be a small pool, and Matt Law will be heavily involved in this, given his footballing career, his behind the scenes footballing career. It's just a level up.
Moving on from that speculation, let's take a short look at the first team squad and what impact Ange's exit will have on some of the players. So, I mean, he's brought some of them halfway around the world here on the Celtic Dream, and now he's off. And you've got to look at guys like Kyogo and Maeda and various lads from Japan who have really gone all out for Ange and been amazing for him. But the question would be, who do you think may also think now is the right time for them to move on? Some may join Ange at Spurs. I think the likes of Jota, Kyogo and Hatate might be in that conversation somewhere. But do you see anybody, is anyone jumping at you that might just say this is the right time for me to leave Celtic as well?
The biggest one for me, based on his relationship with the manager, would be Kyogo. And I also think he is absolutely, I mean, that goal on Saturday is just
again
razor sharp. He is an outstanding footballer. He really is. I just love watching him. I hope the fact that he's settled and been picked for Japan would mean that he would stay. But yeah, as Ange's mentioned, he's a winner. He's fiercely ambitious. And I just worry that one thing that will probably be guaranteed is if Ange goes down there, and he'll pay the going rate for him. He'll pay money, which will, this Celtic board, if they know that they're going to get north of 25 million for him, they'll be all in.
And 25 is a sub striker in the Premiership.
But that's what I mean. So if that makes sense. But I hope and I pray that he stays. He's phenomenal. Hatate's slightly different for me because of the age he is, and he is on that progressive journey. And the plan would always have been to come to Celtic for a couple of years and leave. I think we're all realistic enough in that. He is a phenomenal talent. I still, the man plays at 40%. I think if somebody can just unlock that key in him, that can get a bit more out of him, he's ridiculously talented. It'll be a sad day when Hatate goes, but I'd kind of almost steel myself. The likes of Hatate or Riley, Abada for me were the ones that would most likely move on. And I'd heard a rumour about Starfelt as well. Again, just people saying Starfelt, but I would imagine he'd be somebody that'd be more likely to stay.
James, I'll throw a couple of others at you before I do so. Thomas O'Connor, big fan of the show, and thanks to Thomas for his support. He's got in touch and saying, well, if Ange rates all these guys he speaks so highly, surely we should be expecting a bid of 10 million for Tony Ralston any day now. I don't know if that'll happen. You can give me your thoughts on it. But a couple of other guys that Mif didn't mention there, Jota and a potential Spurs return for Cameron Carter-Vickers might be something that would happen. Yeah,
I think you need to be realistic as well, though. The level that Ange is going to be operating, Postecoglou is going to be operating at now. It'll take time. He's going to be operating at now, and yeah, you can go and get those guys, and they would cost you, heavy money from Celtic. They're all on new contracts, those two in particular. But he'll want to go in there. He'll want to have a good look at what he's got. I think he's going to have to clear that out because the attitude in there stinks. That's their biggest problem. They've let this kind of attitude permeate the club, and it's not been stamped upon. Ange will stamp upon it. Postecoglou will stamp upon it. I'll get better.
Yeah, I mean he's fishing in different waters now, Mif, and he doesn't have to scrape around as much. Although I mean, I don't think he's a manager that would just go down there and flippantly just blow mounds because he now can. He's astute in that
market. That we couldn't afford, and he'll go, I can afford them now.
Yeah, but gut feeling, do you think he'll take any of our guys?
Maybe Kyogo as a sub striker. I really do. Because Kyogo come on last half an hour for Spurs. He could do a lot of damage down there, no bother at all. He could play himself into a regular slot as well, but they're going to go out and spend daft money replacing Kane. That'll be their chief striker. But if you want a bit of cover there, Kyogo's the man.
Mif, a slightly different question, but with Ange moving on, is there anyone who you think may be given a reprieve at Celtic? We've spoken about David Turnbull, really talented, but your point has always been, James, that he doesn't quite fit Ange's system and the fast pace of it, the free-flowing football. New coach will have new ideas, whoever comes in, it won't be an identikit of what Ange is doing. So maybe a talent like David Turnbull might be staying around.
I thought he had a spring in his step on Saturday when he
came on.
He's
okay.
So they are.
Is that you, mate?
Aye. See you later, mate. Yes is the quick answer to that, and if the squad is drained, then it might be through necessity because you'll need to keep guys like Turnbull in the building if somebody like Hatate or whoever's going to go. There was always going to be a period of, or this pre-season was always going to be a period of flux anyway, just because we had been readied for that by the manager. In the quotes that you already read out earlier, Tino, little did we know he was included in that, but it just might make it a bit bumpier this summer, and it just goes back to the point of why you need to get somebody in quicker, because that's the situation that has to be managed. I would hope that the key in all of this is Callum McGregor, because Callum McGregor staying and being on board with the new manager coming in, as we've seen, is the key.
Spurs should be signing Callum McGregor.
Think so? Good enough for that level?
Yeah, 100%. Play any team.
All the more important that he stays around. He looks like he's happy to stay around, and he'll be galvanised by the responsibility he's been given as captain. He's broke his own world record by being the first and only player to win 5 trebles. And I think all the more important, as you say, that we get someone in early, because there's so much planning now. There's a lot of planning already been done, but there's so much now to be done in terms of who stays, who goes, when, how, why. There's a lot at stake. That's
part of it, that speaks to the David Turnbull situation. The football we've played under Postecoglou is the best I've enjoyed in my Celtic supporting career. It would be madness not to try and maintain that with your next manager, and Turnbull doesn't fit with that. He's a brilliant technical player, likes to have time on the ball. It doesn't happen under that type of football. I think Italy, maybe Germany, are ready made for him, and I think it's over for him.
We'll see, but we know that there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. I think the squad was potentially reaching its first proper cycle, or the end of its first cycle, and there was going to be some turnover. That will definitely be the case now that Ange is away. Listen, over the piece, it's been a brilliant couple of years. It's sore at the moment, but 5 trophies out of 6 tells its own story. Personally, overall, I don't have a huge issue with his exit. It's just football, and it's how it goes. But we certainly have to now get our own house in order quickly for another crack at the Champions League and beyond. Any final comments from you lads before we move on?
For me, well, I just, keen to put the saga to bed, move on, and see who's going to come in. That's where I'm at. The position the club's in is what gives me the most comfort, but I think that makes it even more paramount that someone comes in and really takes a grip of the situation. We hold on to certain players and we start to build that squad for the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to remember, and this is a good reminder of it, we're the constant, the fans. These guys will always come and go, particularly when there's professional decisions to be made. We're the constant, and we'll support whoever comes in.